Professor Shaista Sonnu SIrajuddin is the former Chairperson, Department of English, and the Dean of Arts and Humanities, University of the Punjab, Lahore. She did her MA from Cambridge and MLit from Oxford University. Professor Shaista Sonnu SIrajuddin has inspired generations of postgraduate students at Punjab University for more than 4 decades.
It's been 400 years since Shakespeare spoke or wrote. Has Shakespeare really died? How and why is Shakespeare still relevant to us? The people of 21st century, the young men of 21st century, how can they connect themselves with what Shakespeare had to say?
When you use the word dead, I would put it another way. I would say that your question can be answered if we think of Shakespeare being regularly resurrected in a classroom context in Pakistan. So it's not so much a question of whether he has died or not. The question is, how is it possible that he continues to live? And the acid test for me has been, as a teacher, to gauge the response of my students. And my students, despite linguistic and cultural differences and the fact that they are not really conversant with Shakespeare in English and that world to the degree that they ought to be perhaps, that they respond so readily. So I would begin by saying that it's not a question of academicians deciding whether a writer is dead or not. The proof of the pudding lies in the eating. And the eating in this case is the interaction between the text and the students. The mediator is the teacher. So, and this has been my experience, and I can only talk from my own perspective. Other people might find that he is irrelevant. In which case, of course, they'd also have to say in what sense he's irrelevant. The issues, the concerns that Shakespeare's plays portray, they are all issues and concerns that we can find kinship with. So relevance in itself seems to me an irrelevant word. Great literature, like great music or great art, doesn't really ever die. And I think that what happens with theatre is that it is a live medium. I mean, unfortunately, we only get to read plays. But every time a play is performed, something comes to life. And it comes to life because there are people who are flesh and blood, whom you can see on the stage, walking about, interacting, speaking. And that, in a sense, renews the play. I think perhaps when people say that he's irrelevant, Shakespeare is irrelevant, perhaps they are talking in the sense that they think of him as an Englishman, and with our background of colonial history, there may be some of that element that, perhaps we should rid ourselves of all these shadows which haunt us. But I think that Shakespeare, in a sense, he was very much of his time, and that's why I always hesitate. In fact, I do not like to refer to him as timeless. Nobody is timeless, and I think that the authenticity of the plays is partly because, or largely because, he is very much a man of his own time. But it was because he was a man of his own time that he could vault over time and centuries and still connect with us. So I think that is important. The fact that he is both rooted in his own time, but he can also transcend a specific period and its culture. And the concerns, what he talks about human beings. He talks about what concerns human beings. He talks about the marketplace. He talks about the palaces, marketplaces, ordinary people. princes, kings. So all that, it's a very, very large canvas. And to simply say, well, he is irrelevant. Maybe Shakespeare, the man is irrelevant, but the plays live. The plays all speak to us. I think that in our own time, Shakespeare is no longer a unified personality. He is so many things to so many people. As I said, he has dispersed himself in such a way that he can be understood and performed in Africa, he can be performed and understood in Jhang, or in Lahore, or Karachi, or Britain, in Stratford, in Sydney. So, I just think that it takes a great deal of temerity on our part, and I think ignorance, to dismiss a writer for political or other reasons, which one never really explains. या तो वजाहत होना कि जी इस वजह से हम समझते हैं कि ये irrelevant है। अब एक आप कह सकते हैं कि जी किंग्स और प्रिंसेस अब होते नहीं, लिहाजा वो तो सारी उसकी ट्रेजेडी जो है वो सारे किंग्स और प्रिंसेस हैं ट्रेजेडी। But I think that is such a naive view of things, because Hamlet is also, he's not just a prince, he's also a man, he's a young man. Why is it that my students in the Punjab, the young men, they identify with Hamlet जब आप Hamlet पढ़ाते हैं? Why they can also understand and empathize with somebody like Lear? क्योंकि एक लिहाज से हमारे कल्चर में बहुत सी ऐसी चीज़ें हैं जो कि उस दौर के साथ रलती हैं, कि एक बूढ़ा बाप है, उसने अपनी जायदाद बांटनी है, उसकी बेटियां हैं। तो मेरा तो अपना ख्याल है कि शायद यहाँ ज़्यादा उसकी समझ आती है स्टूडेंट्स को बाहर के मुल्क के बनिस्बत, जहाँ के फैमिली स्ट्रक्चर उस तरह का अब नहीं है। उनके लिए बूढ़े बाप और बेटियों वगैरह का जो सीन है वो शायद बरतानिया में ना इतनी जल्दी लोगों को यानी किसी उसके साथ they may not feel familiar with that sort of scene, because their grandfathers, who may be Lear's age, are probably in an old person's home or have died. So I really feel that perhaps Shakespeare lives outside of England much more, and I feel the same way about Lorca. Lorca, I think, taught here makes much more sense, because Lorca's issues that he talks about are so, they strike a chord with us here. I've seen productions of Lorca's plays in England, and they are quite honestly a little insipid. We as Punjabis or as Pakistanis or as South Asians, we are able to, summon those passions and those emotions and those issues.
And particularly from the point of view of the young men and women, these young guys, you've been teaching at Punjab University, you've taught for more than 4 decades, for almost 46 years. How is it that your young students have responded to Shakespeare in the classrooms and then Shakespeare in their lives?
Well, as I said, my acid test is in the classroom. And I've always found a very responsive audience. And as I said, they seem to be able to understand and also enjoy Shakespeare more than they do, let's say, 20th century poetry, which I've also taught for many, many years. They find that more difficult to understand. Not because it's the language or because of linguistic reasons, but somehow they don't seem to be able to identify so much. It's Shakespeare's concerns. The fact that he can get under the skin of men and women. That we still seem to have issues that our young people can share with what they read.
And does it have to do with the fact that fundamental human nature has not changed?
Well, there is an argument about that. I think that to regard human nature also as fixed, I myself don't agree with that. And I think in Shakespeare's case as well, it is that there is such diversity. Human nature is not fixed. And, but obviously human concerns. And I think that the word that comes to my mind is that there is a certain capaciousness in Shakespeare. And he seems to touch so many different chords. That really, I mean, and he touches so many different levels of human nature. So वो एक चीज़ नहीं है कि जी ये fixed है कि इंसान इस तरह है और हैवान इस तरह है. I think that there is great capaciousness, great depth. And just as there is depth, there is also, a very broad span. Dylan Thomas described W.H. Auden as a wide and deep poet. And I always, when I say this, when I quote this in class, the students for a second look a little surprised because they think ये कोई तरखान है या width or depth ये किस तरह measure कर रहा है. But I think wide and deep really are such perfect words. They are functional words, and yet you can see that Shakespeare is a wide and deep poet.
The kind of change that we have witnessed in the reading habits, particularly of our youth. Do you, I mean, 400 years? How do you see Shakespeare in, let's say, 50 years?
Well, I think probably a lot of people will have stopped reading the plays, but they will be seeing the films, even if it's just to pass an exam. अक्सर टेक्स्ट तो कोई पढ़ता ही नहीं है, वो कहते हैं जी फिल्म देख लो, उसकी वो डीवीडी है वो लगा लो, ताकि कम से कम स्टोरी लाइन पता लग जाती है कि कौन है.
So Shakespeare may evolve, but he won't disappear.
No, Shakespeare has evolved. He has evolved across genre, across various, यानी आप देख लें, अब टेलीविजन एक मीडियम है, सिनेमा एक और मीडियम है, थिएटर एक और मीडियम है, तो वो तो डिस्पर्स हो गया. मैं जैसे आपको बता रही हूँ ना, his seed is everywhere. And I think as long as we continue to enjoy what he has to say and be engaged and excited, he lives. Now we can say that he is dead, but I think that there are certain things, great art, as I said, always manages to resurrect itself. And I think that applies to not just literature, but since we are specifically talking about Shakespeare, we have to perhaps lose our more fixed and rigid notions about what is relevant and what is not relevant. It is, I think, Shakespeare who tells us a great deal about what is relevant in life and what is irrelevant, or what is truth and what is lies. कई चीज़ें जब वो जो चीज़ें जो हमें डिस्टर्ब करती हैं, वो हमें कुरेदती हैं, तो वो चीज़ें हैं जो कि मेरा तो अपना ख्याल है कि आपकी एक मैच्योरिटी और आपकी ग्रोथ का बहुत ज़रूरी हिस्सा है. और अगर आपको तकलीफ़ होती है, कई चीज़ें जो शेक्सपियर के प्लेज में कई सवाल जो उठते हैं, उस कुरेदने और उस तकलीफ़ से एक लिहाज से आपको बहुत ज़्यादा इंसाइट्स भी मिलती हैं, अपने अंदर भी और बाहर भी. मैंने एक आर्टिकल में भी यही लिखा था that the question, for example, Lear, who is it who can tell me who I am? Lear की एक लाइन है, तो ये आप देखें, इसको आप रला सकते हैं, बोले आखी जाना मैं कौन. तो ऐसी बहुत सी चीज़ें हैं जो कि उसका जोड़ बहुत सी चीज़ों के साथ है, या बहुत से और जो लोग थे, जो और ग्रेट पोइट्स थे, फिलोसफर्स थे, उनका बहुत, यानी मेरा तो नहीं ख्याल कि बुल्ले शाह कहेंगे कि जी वो शेक्सपियर जड़ा सी हो तो कोई फ़ायदा नहीं, कोई लोड़ ही नहीं. जब तो हमारी जो नोशंस ऑफ रेलेवेंस हैं, दे आर रादर narrow, and I think that very often they are quite ignorant. and very often we choose to be ignorant because we are afraid. Great art frightens us because it explores areas that we would much rather not want to explore.
Exactly. Thank you, ma'am. It's been very kind.
Thank you. Thank you.